This is Warhammer 40k Darktide. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is a cooperative Left 4 Dead-like experience set within, well, the realms of the grim, dark future of, well, Warhammer 40k. So if you're familiar with that, it's spooky, it's intense, it's grim, and yeah, it's quite an experience. So we've got two graphical options here. The first, which we're showing, and the suggested, and I believe the default mode as well, is performance mode. So that's 60 FPS targeting. What we're getting here is a kind of like dynamic resolution scaling, upscaled presentation. So something like 860p up to 1440p is what it upscales to. Yeah, like I said, at 60 FPS, and that's kind of what you're seeing. There are performance hiccups, there are drops, there are some occasional like stutters, and some really weird little visual bits, which we'll show off in a sec, but I wanted to show off the quality mode. There's also FOV adjustment if you'd like to. So we'll switch over to quality mode, so you can see that in action. So immediately you can notice the change in the performance level, 30 FPS with quality mode. But what we're getting here is something like 1400p, again a dynamic resolution scaling that is up to 4K. So this one also has performance issues where it's not quite hitting 30 FPS. It does look visually quite a bit sharper, like this is a big jump up in visual fidelity, but the cost of performance, you know, going down to like 30 and not even hitting 30, I don't know if this is necessarily the best way to go about this game, but you know, if you do want to give this a whirl, actually to me this is more of a next gen or mid gen refresh if that happens sort of setting, honestly. But even then the frame rate is like, you know, it feels way better. It's a shooter, you know what I mean? It's, yeah, that's kind of the way to go. Spatial sound, Dolby Atmos, DTS:X support. Cooperative play is the focus. Like I said, it's along the lines of Left 4 Dead, so it's a 4-player cooperative setup. So you're able to matchmake with others at any given time. There's bots if you need them. But yeah, the game is seriously meant to be played with others. It's just, yeah, not quite as fun without other people involved, honestly. So it is also very much like their previous title, since this is from Fat Shark. They made Warhammer Vermintide 1 and 2, which were games I quite enjoyed. So this one follows in that vein of being melee focused, where instead of rats, you've got these hive type, almost essentially zombie-like enemies that you're mowing through across what's actually a wide range of differing missions. So I do want to go back to what I was talking about in regards to the performance. So this game, and I really don't know how well this is going to show up when you're watching it as a video on YouTube, but this game has like this really weird, jaggedy, like super jaggedy, as if aliasing is like non-existent, sort of effect to some of the environment. It's really strange. Like in most situations when you're moving around, you're not going to really notice it, but in the backdrop it can be really present, and also if you just kind of stand, it can be like a really present thing, kind of like with the grading of kind of the fencing over there. But for me it was mostly like when you get to some larger scale areas and you're kind of looking off into the distance, it really does look very rough and very present, which to me is a bit bizarre. And even kind of like medium distance at times, you can kind of notice it within the environment, the stairs and just the geometry and stuff. It's really bizarre. Now this is like, I would say, a visually impressive game. Like it does look, I think, pretty good. You know, the detail of it, all the stuff going on, the enemies, the way you kind of like blast them and attack them, and there's, you know, explosions and crazy things going on. But kind of compared to Vermintide, that one felt like it was sort of hitting, it was definitely hitting high resolution thresholds, and I don't know, I guess it's just, this is a lot more technically demanding, I suppose you could say. Like right here you can kind of notice it along, you know, the balconies and stuff like that. Like, it's not a problem. Like, I still think, again, that this looks aesthetically fine, and it does hit that, like, grim, dark feeling that I think, in my opinion, a Warhammer 40k game should hit. And I think you'll quite like it if you're familiar with this universe and you've wanted to play a game in it. And it's really neat how they handle the elements of, like, hey, this is a game with guns. It's a shooter. But, you know, melee is your primary. You're not always having ammo. You're not always having, you know, weapons and ways to shoot. Why are these teammates so far behind? And there are, you know, different difficulty options that you can enjoy, and it's got all the fine-tuned Left 4 Dead type things, like if I die, my teammates can come and rescue me. If I fall off for a ledge, they can pull me back up. You know, you have health, you have, like, grenade-type options that you collect. There is, like, leveling, so there is, like, a skill tree that you kind of work up, and there's different types of kind of classes. You know, you could be very large, or have a little bit of, like, a magic-infused sort of thing. Like, it hits the mark for these aspects quite well. It actually plays good. You know, aside from performance issues, but I think it does play pretty well, and it lends itself to very extensive experiences and very cooperative options for letting your teammates, you know what's going on. And there's a variety of different enemies you face off against, and different types of bosses, and like there is good variety within the missions. Like the missions themselves is not just all moving through, like it is moving through linear spaces, but you will be like, you know, kind of doing different objectives, moving fusion coils, or taking out this enemy, or exploring this place, or kind of, I guess, I don't know, guiding along is the best word, but following the skull thing while it, like, detects stuff. But, like, the missions themselves, you get all kinds of various places, these really creepy underling areas, desert-type spots, these, you know, really grim, dark, kind of cityscapes. And there is a good selection. Like, you can play hours and hours of this and consistently kind of come across some new spots. So I think that aspect is pretty impressive and pretty well done. There isn't really much of a story here, which is kind of disappointing to me, because at the beginning it seemed like they were going for a story. You know, you're like broken out of jail. You make your character in this, like you customize your character. No matter what you do, they all look ugly and messed up and grim because that's the universe this is. It's kind of funny if you're trying to make someone that looks pretty, as to say. It's like everyone's scuffed up and scarred, and that's kind of hilarious. So I like that element of making your own character, and then you're able to, like, and you can't really see it because we're not in the hub world, because there's like a hub area you go to, and you're able to, like, you know, you'll get different, like, cosmetic armor, or you'll get upgraded weapons. Like, there's a whole loot system, which we'll have to talk about in just a little bit. But, yeah, you make your character, you get in there as a jailbreak, you meet, like, a commander thing, and then, you know, everybody just tells you you're garbage and whatnot, which, you know, again, very much on brand with this universe. And then occasionally they go, oh, maybe you're better, and then they're like, no, you still are worthless. And it's yeah, it seems like they're building a story. It's not really at all any sort of narrative. There's good lore here. There definitely is a lot of cool, good lore stuff. But, like, if you're expecting some sort of story element, like, the Vermintide games actually did have a bit of story going to them, which I quite appreciated. And that really doesn't quite seem present here. And you could spend a lot of time playing this, and, you know, I could even spend more time playing this, I guess, if I wanted to, and I wouldn't necessarily get bored, but I would kind of have expected something deeper. Like, Left 4 Dead, for me, the fun of that one is just the replayability over and over again. I don't care about the story stuff, but, like, I don't know, it just seemed like they were doing something more there, and then, you know, they just didn't really do anything with it, which is a bit odd. But, you know, I do like the playstyle, I do like the customization, kind of talking about, you know, your characters. So, the big part of this game is your weaponry, and then the looting of weaponry. So I mentioned there's skill trees, yeah, so you get perks, you level up, and you kind of pick your little perks out of a skill tree, and you get to choose from different branches. That totally fine, makes sense, yep, I like it. And then there's the guns and the weapons. So you've got your primary weapon, which is your melee weapon. It could be like a shovel, a knife, it's kind of a chainsaw type thing, a little bit of a dagger. You know, there's a few different stabby stab things you can get, so that you can melee, and you know that's a big part of the game. Then you got your guns. There's like the iconic like pistols, and then there's all these rifles. And there's a lot of different weapons. And what you're doing is you're either kind of being gifted new weapons, you're going to the store to buy new weapons, or you're kind of randomly through these kind of like challenge type things. You are... I'm destroyed. Sorry, that name just kills me. What a distraction. You're getting new weapons, so you then sell old weapons, and you get new ones, and you're always kind of getting some new options, and then you can take those weapons, and if you have enough, like, I think it's like consignment points or something like that, you're able to kind of upgrade, and then there's like weapon blessing, and it can feel like it doesn't feel necessarily too grindy, but some parts of this game can feel grindy if you're trying to get to different parts. You really got to think of it from the perspective of like, you're literally just here to play these missions, like you're not trying to work towards any story stuff, and I think it becomes a lot more intriguing. But there is a bit of a slow grind bit thing as you try to first unlock all of the different elements of like access, if that makes sense. Like, oh, I want to get to the point where I can get weapons, oh, I want to get to the point where I can get these kind of upgrades, and you have to get to certain like reputation levels and stuff in order to be able to access that kind of stuff, and it triggers a cutscene to introduce you to a new person. And yeah, you really, like, honestly, if I went back, I would kind of think of it as more like I'm just playing for fun as opposed to I'm playing to work towards something, and I think that makes it a little bit more engaging and interesting. And as I said, there's all this like cosmetic stuff for your characters, and you can change up how they look and stuff, and there's no limitations on that regard. But yeah, this one really, it's going to come down to whether or not you enjoy the core gameplay loop, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, do you have fun sitting here working, with randoms online, working with friends, working, I guess, by yourself with the bots, if that's your sort of thing. If you find that this gameplay loop is rewarding and fun, like, it's grimy, it's gritty, you see enemies kind of like get to bits, like, it looks really cool atmospherically, they nail the environment, the style, and everything like that. I love it. And it's just sort of like, does this work for you is the biggest thing, because as much as I like the Left 4 Dead sort of gameplay loop, and I could say you're probably just wasting hours and hours and hours if I'd like, so long as, I do get a good enough variety within the maps, because there's a lot of maps, but who's to say you won't end up with, like, a lobby doing the same thing over and over again, who knows, right? And then there's the difficulty. If you want to just have, like, a terrible hardcore time with it, you can crank that up and try to survive as a team, good luck to you and stuff. But yeah, that's really what this game is. It's that core loop. Go into a scenario, do the missions, extract. Sometimes you're assassinating folks, sometimes you're flicking switches, sometimes you're managing a skull. There's all kinds of things, like, and I do think they've actually put together a good amount of content, and it does feel different enough each time you go about it, as long as it's not like couple like the same sort of thing in a row. I think it actually feels pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, there is good level of variety for these areas, and these maps themselves too. Like, some of the quests and the levels can take like half an hour or so, depending on how fast you move through it. Oh, now I'm burning alive. That's lovely. So it's not like they're just quick done levels. Like, these missions, some of them really do quite stretch on, which is fine because you don't really feel it, if that makes sense. Like, you're kind of just going through it, and you're having, at least for me, having a pretty good time with it. So this one's kind of like impressive from that regard. It's weird how long this one kind of took to finally become available. And I know that there were perhaps some things that others were not huge on when this one, kind of released and whatnot, because it was PC. It was supposed to be PC console same time, and it was PC, and then eventually we did get console. about a year afterwards, which was wild to have to wait that long. It was a little disappointing how much of a delay, because there was like literally no word on it. You know, I was kind of assuming that the PC and console thing would be a little closer, which is why I was like, oh, I'll just wait, you know, for the console version, and then it just kind of never really came out, and now we're here with it, and I'm kind of looking and being like, well, this is sort of fine. I'm not really sure what the big hurdle was gameplay mechanics wise, because I know there was lots of insight and complaints on that front, but like I assume maybe it was more technical was the big problem, because still the performance is not ironed out here, and I don't know, like it's kind of like pushing, you know, visual aspects, but at the same time I kind of like, I feel like there should be a higher threshold we're getting for like you know, at least steady performance with that low of a resolution scaling sort of system in place. It can be a bit bizarre. There are also like secondary type objectives in some situations. It really depends on your setup as well and what you're doing, but yeah, I don't know, I wanted to throw that in there in case you're wondering about the scripture kind of things, because you can like pick up books and get extra points, and, you know, there is occasionally some side stuff. So I'm sure some people are looking around the screen being like, oh, what's this part of it? Yeah, that kind of explains it. But yeah, I like it. You know, I do like this game. I do find it cool. I do find it fun. I could sit here and waste hours and hours if I had the time to waste hours and hours. I could certainly do that and not have, you know, any problems doing that. That's for sure. It would really just come down to, like, you know, how generous matchmaking is in regards to who I end up with, and, you know, am I playing the same matches over and over again? I'm sure there's some level of limitations, but it does feel a little different when you go back and do things, and the missions are long enough, and there's enough of them where I'm kind of like, okay, this is cool, I like this. And it's gritty. I said that quite a few times, but it genuinely is, you know, got a gritty vibe to it, which is exactly what it should be like. It just, tonally it fits, you know, tonally it fits. I like that there's personalization. I like what this, oh jeez. I like the style of play, I like all the weird quirks of it, and the crazy, like, special type enemies you have to face, and weird things where they kind of, like, push you out into the distance, or canister explodes and you go flying off, and, you know, it's neat that it's a shooter, but it's not really a shooter. They somehow made a shooting game melee focused, which, to me, is really impressive. Like, honestly, I was expecting, like, a straight-up shooter. And the fact that they actually do have such a good emphasis on melee-based play as well. So that it's like kind of what you do most of the time, but you don't feel like, oh, I just wish I was shooting things. That is kind of an impressive balance to me. So props that they were able to make that work as well as it does. There's a lot in this that works really, really well. And I'm very curious to see if this is sort of some sort of long-term thing, because I do feel with a bit more of a power overhead, you know, like say a next-gen console or mid-gen or something, I do wonder if we can make this look a lot better and be a little bit more performant, as I already feel, strangely enough, like we've already had limitations in games like this that kind of give me that sort of vibe, which is, I don't know if that's a great feeling, this kind of middling on for a generation where I'm already like, oh, okay, so we've kind of reached the max, or what's, you know, are things not being pushed enough? I don't know. Oh, and I also want to mention that I really like the music in this. It's got like a really good sort of like techno kind of vibe. It's also a bit bleak at times, but yeah, the music, I just really want to praise the audio, and I don't know how intensive the music is right now for you, but like, it can get really bumping when things are getting crazy, and it's like those moments where it's a little bit more like awe, or like ooh, or it's so creepy. It really helps set up the atmosphere, I gotta say. But my biggest issue here, which is kind of funny, is like when I'm playing this, I really keep thinking that I'm shooting at like rats, because I'm so used to their Vermintide, which I highly, like, if you like this, I highly recommend Vermintide. Because it's at equal level, or maybe even a little bit better in some situations. Very, very cool game, which is like this, but it's in the, you know, the fantasy universe. So, yeah, I think you would kind of find that worthwhile to check out too. But I like this. I like what they did with this. I think this is pretty good, and look forward to revisiting this, you know, at some point when it can get a little bit of a bump up for visual and performance-wise.